So this structure of papers was invented by Louis Pasteur, but it was only adopted effective as a standard of writing papers by the late 1970s. It began to appear in the papers around 1940s, but it became standard in 1970s. Okay, I only disagree with this Chinese professor in one point, that he says that the conclusion part is optional. I didn't read in many papers and theses and dissertations and many types of publications, I didn't see any paper without final considerations or conclusions or a section titled as a guisa de conclusão. Any paper has to be has to have a final statement, a final page with the synthesis of everything you found in that paper. So these are the main parts of the paper: title, abstract, introduction, the locus of research, study site, methods. In medicine, biology, and engineering, sometimes this part of methods is called materials and methods. Next, results, and almost closing the discussion. So the results section is the part when you present the data that you found in the field, and the discussion is the part where you relate this data from the field with the knowledge that you found in the literature of the area. In the final considerations or conclusions, you may call this differently, varying with the area you are publishing. That the conclusions are the synthesis of the results plus the discussion, and in addition you try to say what were the limitations of your work, the suggestions to future work, and suggestions to people from the general society, people from the profession that is linked with that research paper, and because you have to relate that findings and results and discussion with the society in general, because you can't write a paper that is not related to the society in general. It has to have impact in the research area, and it has to have impact on the society in general also. Okay.
Yes, I think it say the conclusions are efficient because in natural science it's common
not to have conclusion.
No.
It's weird. Okay.
Because in the results and discussion, it's like a conclusion. In natural science.
Okay.
He talk about ecology.
Ecology, yes. That's it. Okay. Another thing that started to change in the ending of the 20th century, it was the abstract part. They started to have several sections inside the abstract, each part with one paragraph long, and we start stating what are the aims of our work, next the methods, then results, and finally the conclusions, or a synthesis of the main findings of your work. Okay. Sometimes when you submit a paper to an event like an encounter or congress or anything, you have to write an expanded abstract, and sometimes it has to be structured in this several sections. It cannot be one large paragraph with 250 words, for example. So this type of event, it's a little I don't not threat, but it's a little dangerous because sometimes you didn't write the paper yet, and you have to submit the expanded abstract, and then your abstract is approved, and only then you start to write the paper. Sometimes you have to write the paper in a hurry because you don't know if this abstract is going to be approved or not. It's a little dangerous because of that. Okay. This text is in the wrong folder. This is part of that series of many one-page papers, and each paper is about one section of the paper. So this is the first one, the introduction. And the only tip that this author gives are some references in the 3 to 8 reference at the final of the paper. So this Fraser, Sturck, Davis, Jacques, and okay, and Kaus are some classic papers, just like Werden and Sutton and Stoll and Weik for the business and management area. So to this epidemiology area, Fraser, Sturck, and all these people are the classics of methodology of writing good papers. Okay. What are the other things that this guy says? Only this, the homework. What to read when you try to write good papers. I think that I did when I was trying to start reading and writing good papers, just because I am a mathematician. We don't have much training in writing inside our college. So if you want to start writing good papers, theses and dissertations, you have to be on your own and start searching for good texts to be inspired on them. So one thing that is good to search is for the keywords writing papers, and the other theory building. When you search for these keywords, these expressions, you find good books, good papers about how to do all this stuff. I don't recommend you search on Google only. It's better to look for this kind of information in periódicos CAPES. And if you don't want to read only papers, you can search on this base that I'm going to show. It's just like Estante Virtual, but inside the entire world. So they call themselves the Google of dead books, the books that are not found in any standard library that only sells new books. This book finder site is better. So I'm in love with the site because it puts a column of used books, a column of new books, and both the columns are organized in order of price, including the freight that they want you to pay with the price of the book. They sum the freight and the price of the book and put in crescent order for you to see. So if I want to search for Gender Trouble from Judith Butler, okay, so you can choose if you want only new books, any or only used books. You can choose if you want books in English, Dutch, French, German, Italian, or Spanish, or in any language. You can choose too if you want to search for by ISBN, and he converts the currency to real, so you don't have to multiply the value by 3 or 4 in the case of Brazilian real. So they put first the most important, the most searched books. So if you search by theme, like building theory or writing papers, they put here in the first places the best books about these things that you are searching. So if I click in this first, they put 2 columns. It's funny because this column of new books is cheaper than the column of used books. It's starting from 53, and the used books is starting from 68. So you can see that the column is in the increasing order. And sometimes the prices are not very nice like this. Sometimes I had to buy books of 350 reais because the book was important, and that's okay. Let's eat more at home. Let's start not to put gas a lot in the car and cut in another place to buy here.
It's possible to find the book and search in WorldCat as they have a catalog from all the main libraries in the world, and you can have a friend there to make a copy.
Oh, nice.
I'm using this because I'm using to write an article. Books that are so expensive.
Yes.
WorldCat.
Oh.
To primary sources as from 1817. You can find there like memoir, diaries, and all this.
Okay. Nice sharing. Okay. Okay. If you wanna learn another language, here this Korean guy says that the main language to learn to write and read foreign papers is English, as we already thought. Okay. So he analyzes the moves that the authors make when writing the introductions of the papers. So you remember when I said that there were three techniques of writing a good introduction: the gap, the break, and the counter stream. And this author says that the main technique that many authors researched here are using the gap technique. So the authors usually establish a research territory. They talk about the context of the research in the whole area. Then they say where the gap is. They establish a niche, and then they occupy that gap. They occupy that niche that they found in the second move. So here there are many examples of phrases that are related to the respective moves. Okay. Okay. So there were some authors that stated at the second move their needs and desires for the research, because in this area of education it is allowed to be a little more subjective, a little more telling of your own life history. So in this kind of area you can say that you had a professional or personal experience that led to that research theme or that research work. In natural or technological or other science, it's not very good to do that. Okay. Okay. So this fourth part is about using the reference that you are going to state in your work. So this author says that more important than just cite many references, you have to take a stance towards the findings. So if one concept is a little brute or a little superficial, you can take stance on that and name what were the defects on this concept. If just like the defects on the concept that I used in my thesis of cultural standards, there were 4 big areas in social psychology that were used to define that concept. There were action, perception, judgment, and another one, the fourth one I can't remember. But there is a huge theory of action, there is a huge theory of perception, there is a huge theory about the third one. Each area has a huge theory. So the author picked 4 huge theories and put inside the concept, and said that when that concepts were used to evaluate other people's actions, they were cultural standards. So if you want to establish a good concept, try to pick one concept, a little concept, and that one can derive another little concept that you are going to use in your work. You can't start merging many theories, because you can get a mess with that. I think that the author that stated that is a very pragmatic person, and the the texts that he writes are very, very focused on CEOs that are going to be expatriated to another countries, mainly from Austria and German. And because of that, because these kind of people does not usually make use of theories and concepts. They only want to make things work in their own context. I think that they also did not take this more meticulous care of how to build the concept because of the CEO focus. Okay. So an advice that this Korean researcher gives is that you need to avoid direct citation when you write the introduction section. I usually advise to avoid this kind of citation in the entire work, only when you define a concept or when you are bringing the central piece of legislation. You try to put that in the direct citation form manner. But when you try to relate many theories from many different authors, it's best to do that with indirect citations because they are more adaptable to be linked with each other. It's easier to meet between the many authors when you talk in the indirect stance, not in the integral citation way. Okay. Okay, that one is okay. It's finished. So this one is very short, and the main advice on this one is don't use your supervisor to revise your grammar and spelling. Please! For God's sake! Because sometimes we are supervising and then I'm not going to worry about my Portuguese or my English or whatever else, because my supervisor is a very, very nosy person. And he or she is gonna pick every error or every sentence that is wrong. But it's time consuming. It depletes your energy to always in every line have to correct grammar or orthography or anything else text. So if you can revise your paper before submit it to your supervisor, is better. So even for your qualification project, it's important because you are not going to have to rewrite very much that part of the dissertation, that part from introduction to methodology. So if you put that part to revise before, in the end, you only have to revise half of your dissertation, the results, discussion, and final considerations, plus the references and appendixes and annex and anything. But half your dissertation is almost ready at the qualification project. So before submitting, before making the deposit at the secretary, please revise your grammar. Okay. So when you write a paper, you have to see which audience is reading the journal that you are going to submit your paper. So there are some specific journals that try to make that extension role. They try to be as simple as possible so that the people from the research community and people from the general society, from social movements, all these people can read that papers. So you have to be attentive to which is the audience of that journal, so that you write your paper to that specific audience. So this advice I wouldn't take so seriously, because we are usually in a hurry. Okay, let's. We are usually in a hurry, so you have to revise your ABNT and Portuguese as much as possible. But after you're over your paper, usually here in Brazil, we usually submit our paper to the event or the journal, because we know that the process of the evaluation and revision by the event or the journal is going to be very, very long and very meticulous. So there are going to be many communications between the journal and the person, and if the person can't achieve a good standard of writing, the paper is not going to be published. So the journal keeps advising the author that you have to change this, and this. So if you don't do that, you don't get published. Simple as that. So you can submit almost first draft if you had a thorough revision of ABNT and Portuguese and redaction and everything. Okay. There is something that I don't usually see people doing, at least in my mainstream environment of work, that I don't see people using style books, just like that books that I presented to you, that talk about how to write good papers, how to build a good theory, how to write a good paragraph, how to pick a good theme. These are kind of methodology books that are more focused on the redaction of your work, are very precious material that we are not from the area of linguistics, but this is material that we have to read, because if we don't read this kind of book, our text does not become good. Okay. These passive constructions, they vary between areas. In this area of the guy, they are not very well seen, but in business they are okay. Here again, the guy says that you have to speak, to write in the simple way that you can, because showing off your vocabulary sometimes can seem arrogant or anything like that. He says that sometimes this sounds awkward and wooden writing, like ancient, like people from older times. Okay, don't try to look overly cute, just like you know more complex or difficult words, because that can sound arrogant too. You can use technical language, but you have to present people your work to people as simple and synthetic as possible. Avoid just like we say here in Brazil, avoid filling sausage. Avoid painting the pale gold and etc. Okay. When you construct paragraphs, this advice I saw in a book from a British professor from, I think it's from Cambridge. I bought that book, and here the advice appears just like in that book. You begin each paragraph with a sentence that have the main meaning of the whole paragraph. So it's a topic sentence. Then you, after this first sentence, you have to build the second, the third, or a little more sentences to explain better the meaning of the first sentence. And then the last sentence can make a bridge between one paragraph and another. So always start with the main sentence. And when you have some parts that are related in the work, just like when you are starting to analyze your work, your data, there are some structures that are going to be a little repeated in the form. You have to preserve this parallelism in structure as much as possible, because it's easier to the reader to convey the meaning that you are trying to pass in that redaction. So in your data analysis section, you have to present, for instance, the speeches, the sayings of the interviewed people. Then you have to say each which were I don't know, which was the biggest group of people with that kind of opinion. And then you have to say, using authors, which author, which theory can explain that group of opinion or speeches that were given from by the interviewed people. So you always follow this kind of structure: a speech or table or graphic, and then the common sense sentence that says the majority of people is going this way, or the people are divided in two groups, approximately with half people each group. And then in the last part about this analysis of this question, you have to say which author or theory can explain that phenomenon and what is the explanation to that phenomenon. So every question you have to follow that structure. Okay. Another advice is that we have to pay attention to the tenses, because when you already did the things, you say things in the past. When you will do things, you say things, verbs in the future, and so on. Okay. So sometimes when we are reading papers, they use an author so much thinking that everyone read that author, that sometimes we don't understand the theory that the guy is using. So this advice is good because you have to explain the theory of that big author, that important author, so that everyone, even who didn't get a contact to that author, can understand your paper. So if you are going to use, just like this guy Marx, you have to pick up the part of the theory of Marx that you are going to use, explain this as in a simple and synthetic way as possible, and then you build your part of the theory on top of that part of Marx theory. Okay. Another thing, the 13th advice. You don't usually make judgments about something in the paper or the dissertation. I can to myself feel that that the concept that I'm using has flaws, but I don't say this with all complete words. I have to show to the reader that the concept that I'm using has flaws in this part, and this part. So I don't use judgment in a clear, in a overt way, and try to show to my reader that my position is this one because of very many scientific evidence. Okay, I don't make judgments. Just like when you are from the law area, that you don't have the possibility of making a clear statement of what is your position. You just put pieces of law and then try to show your position through these pieces of law. You don't take an overt position and say, I think this and I think that. Your opinion, usually in scholarly text, your opinion is not to be showed off in an overt way. Okay. When you work with statistics and many sections through the data analysis part, sometimes you prepare many graphics and many tables, and you elaborate many statistics analysis, but only few ones appear in the paper, in the final work. So this advice is saying that you will produce many more figures and tests and many data than you will include in your final product, because mainly in papers you have a limited number of pages to show what you got. So you have only to you have to separate the best part of your work and analyze that. Sometimes you are going to put aside or throw off some things that are not very good.